Hello, this is Todd from Herbal Mana. Today for our podcast, a real treat. He's got a heck of an online presence and quite a following. This is Maria Emmerich. And Maria, you've got an amazing amount of material.
Well, thank you for having me on today.
Oh, thank you. We've actually been partaking, trying to catch up with your world. So I've been cooking away using...
Thank you.
I don't even know how many books you have. It looks like this. What's that?
That you don't look like you need a protein-sparing modified approach.
Well, I'm getting to the point that I don't, but it's been a long journey to get there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my background is filled with orthopedic surgeries and all kinds of issues like that, which led to a lot of unhealthy habits, weight gain, all kinds of issues.
Well, you're here now.
Yeah, getting pretty close.
That's awesome. It's awesome.
Okay.
I think you asked how many books I have. I think it's 21 now. I started writing about 20 some years ago. Yeah.
Your origin story is awesome.
Right.
A long path that you actually did something about. So I want to get the whole origin story because it's really important for our to see that it's a journey. It's not just going to be a magic pill. It's not going to be a little cream or salve that solves everything overnight.
Yeah, I was 16 years old and I went to the doctor and she told me that I had PCOS, which is basically a type 2 diabetes that affects female fertility. And she said, you probably can't have your own children. I was given a prescription for an acid blocker because I had pretty severe acid reflux. I was given an antidepressant because I was pretty depressed and something for IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. And I looked at these prescription drugs. I was like, I don't want to take these. But she said it was nothing I was doing wrong. It was the cards that was dealt in life. But little did she know, I worked at a coffee shop where before I'd go to high school, I would get up at 4 a.m. and go to the coffee shop and make the scone, muffins, and the cinnamon rolls. And whatever didn't sell that day, I got to go home with. So you think that I'm kidding, but I knew like certain days, like Fridays, would sell a lot of cinnamon rolls. So I would make extra to make sure that I had some for dinner. Right. Just one. I wanted some. So I would have like boxes of these goodies, like Seinfeld eating the muffin tops.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was just eating the muffin tops and that was my dinner. And if you look into what causes PCOS, it's excess caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. Yeah, that was my diet. I drank so much coffee. I mean, I worked at a coffee shop. It was free. It was like a great job. I had so much fun there, but I met my husband. I was only 17 and I told him I probably couldn't have my own children. And he's like, that's okay. Let's adopt. There's so many kids that need a home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the one for me. And I was married before I could legally drink alcohol. And I went to college for nutrition and exercise physiology, but I didn't look into a job for it because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. About a few months into our adoption process and like a lot of money into it, he lost his job. And if you know anything about adoption, when you lose a job, that's your main insurance and the household income, you start at square one. Like you go back to zero. So not only did we lose a job, all that money went like poof, like away. So the depression came back pretty hard, but it was more because of the situation. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna just sit here. We ended up, the bank took our house. We sold our cars because we couldn't afford them. So I rode my bicycle to the library because I didn't even own a computer to start writing. And my friend said, you're going to start a blog. And I'm like, what's a blog? This is before blogging was pretty popular. And so I started writing blogs and it gave me a reason to wake up. And I kind of like had a picture of my boys in my mind. Like, this is the reason. And it made that sadness go away because I had a purpose again. Right. And so before you know it, Craig's like, I don't think I need a job. Like, you're doing good. And so he kind of became the behind the scenes person and has been ever since. And before you know it, there's Micah and Kai. And there's more to the story. It's sad. We had a baby die of malaria. Yeah, it was sad. But now I know that these children were meant for me. And all the money towards the books went to adopting them, and it still helps out with adoption too. I don't need any more stuff. I'm simple. I wear the same thing all the time, and I'm just grateful to be in the situation I am. I pinched myself. I was just on a retreat. I do these like retreats around the world, and I was in Italy. And on my way there, I stopped in Amsterdam because I met actually the lady who adopted 2 children at the same time as us. She adopted my son Micah's best friend and a little baby girl. And it was the first time we met since we were in court together. And she lives in Amsterdam now with her family. And that's why I went there. And we were kind of shopping around, and we walked into the shop, and the lady behind the counter said, "Oh my goodness, Maria Emmerich's in my store." And she's from Amsterdam, and she has the book you were held up. And I just can't believe this is happening, you know?
As far as boys, interesting to see them on social media with you.
Yeah. I have one that's very shy and one that's not. You can kind of,
Oh, yeah. Well,
yes.
I see a lot of parents that we talk diet at times, and they're convinced that kids of those ages won't embrace something other than processed food.
They don't have a car. They don't have any money. I'm in charge.
You are in charge.
There's times when
it's fun to see. They're right in the middle of it, cooking and doing their thing.
And they still don't feel that, like, if you ask them, they say that they don't feel left out. Like, my outgoing one, his birthday's coming up. And he's like, for my birthday, I want quesadillas and a lot of heavy cream because he loves putting heavy cream on strawberries and stuff. And I'm like, do you want ice cream with that heavy cream? He's like, sure. So I have these, protein tortillas that are really easy. It's water, egg whites, or dried egg whites, and gelatin and salt. That's all it is. And they make this perfect, like, crepe tortilla. So I already made those, and, put whatever fillings you want in the quesadilla. And then the cream is easy. I have a whipped cream canister that he loves. And I'll just make some ice cream and buy some strawberries, and boom, easy. But I have gummy bear recipes. I have a Pop-Tart recipe. I remember we were watching the Gilmore Girls. You know what the Gilmore Girls is?
Barely.
Okay. Well, it's a great show. And I was watching it with them when they were just little. And they're like, what's a Pop-Tart? Because Lorelai Gilmore always eats Pop-Tarts. I was like, I have a Pop-Tart recipe. Like, why not?
Besides having that variety, one thing I found interesting with your recipes so far, they're pretty darn easy.
Oh.
Very accessible. Don't need very many exotic things to make it work. A few things I didn't have in my pantry, but not many. Yeah, and they actually work. I only started this last week. We've been cooking like crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yes, in fact, we did the chicken balls, the chicken buffalo wings, barbecued some things. And we'll do flourless chocolate cake tonight. So accessible for somebody who doesn't like to cook. That's me. It's pretty darn easy.
Well, thank you. I mean, I can't blame somebody for not liking to cook because I don't like to clean, right? We all like our things. But if you don't like to cook, I tell them, get a slow cooker, get an Instant Pot, because you toss it in there and it cooks it for you. But I remember I can take constructive criticism. I don't mind if people give me something that I can work on. And the first book that I wrote, people said, your recipes are great, but they're too hard. And I took that to heart. And then I had kids. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have time for this either. So they definitely got easier because I don't have the time. So I make stuff that is really like what I think a family would enjoy, and it's easy. So thank you.
Yes, very nice. Yeah, some books that I've tried are just way too complex. 45 ingredients, can't do that.
No, there's a long one, the tailgate chili, which is really good. And it's just long because there's a lot of different spices, but they all add such depth to that chili because there's like cocoa powder in there. There's cinnamon in there. There's so many different things, but people really love it. It's an old one.
So when you got on this path, you had your health issues. Mm-hmm. What changed in your health profile?
Well, I didn't want to take those medications, so I never did. I would say that the first few weeks, my depression, I swear, just went away. I feel like a different person. My IBS and acid reflux totally stopped, especially when I cut out gluten and dairy. And then the PCOS took time. It wasn't an overnight issue with my hormones, so it took time. And I didn't seriously cut out caffeine until I was in my 30s. And I wish I would have earlier because I just feel calmer, better. I sleep better without caffeine. And caffeine increases androgens, which in a female body too high can cause that PCOS to keep flaring. But now I have no signs of that whatsoever, and I haven't for a decade. When people that I knew in high school see me now, they're like, "Who are you?" Because I'm just a completely different person. I'm still a fun person, but I used to be the one that threw the parties and didn't sleep all night and, drank a lot of alcohol. And now it's not a part of my life, but I'm still fun. And I don't know, I feel like I'm a better person.
When you got your diagnosis as a teenager, did you get any help from your doctor for the diet?
No, it was, she said it was nothing I was doing wrong. She didn't even ask me what I was eating. But that same week, I took my golden retriever to the vet, and she was losing patches of her hair. And the first question the vet asked me was, "What are you feeding her?" And I was like, "What? My doctor never asked me that." And so I told him, and he's like, "Dog food is junk. You cannot feed them, box dog food." And so I started feeding her like the raw beef diet with bones and stuff, and her hair completely grew back within like a very short period of time. And anybody who has a dog, you want them to live forever and be the healthiest as possible. And I just thought I was sold a bill of lies from like these dog food companies and stuff. Or I couldn't afford this fancy stuff, so I had to make the raw beef. And I bow hunt, like I told you earlier, and so venison was a huge part of her diet.
Bit of a challenge to find good quality foods for animals and people. Remember, you told that story on the Inflammation Nation podcast in January of this year.
Yeah.
Been a while. And it's so spot on as far as diet recommendations from the normal physician pets. We get virtually nothing, virtually none.
Well, recently I've gotten asked what I eat, and I tell them none of your business. Because they're probably going to think I'm going to die of a heart attack. I mean, if I told them I eat steak every day, and I don't know.
I like that steak every day thing. I grew up on a ranch, so we grew up with steak. We grew up of course, raising our own beef. But then, when I was 21, had an ankle injury, put on some weight, wanted to get it off, got a hold of the most popular book at the time, which was Eat to Win.
Okay.
And that kind of took me on a bad path. That talked about how you need to be high carb, low fat, low protein. The guy that wrote the book, nutritional coach for Martina Navratilova, who was awesome back in the day, went down that path, and it worked for me for a time because I was 21, very active, very fit, and I could get by with a high carb diet for a short time, but it didn't take long to catch up. Then at age 21, I started to feel the effects.
Yeah.
And it just plain didn't work. It wasn't sustainable. Eventually, I found Body for Life, a different iteration, a little bit better, more protein, and then massive cheat days. Supposed to have big old meal like on Fridays. And again, I had some success, but with that cheat day, which became a cheat weekend eventually, it took such extraordinary self-control to get back on track.
Wow.
And it was just a source of a constant personal beating for myself. It's not a long-term success play.
You wouldn't tell an alcoholic to have vodka on Fridays.
Yeah, that was kind of me. That was my alcoholic Friday.
Yeah, and I am definitely have like a very addictive personality, and when you put that flavor on your tongue again, you're gonna crave that again, especially when you're getting that dopamine hit and everything. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be hard to go back on Monday to cut it out. I remember I would have cheat weekends too. In the beginning, I was in college, and I just didn't like the way I felt on Mondays anymore. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. When I finally got into it, I found that if I did my cheat meal, even if I kept it with a cheat meal, I'd wake up the next morning feeling bloated, sluggish, foggy.
It's not worth it to me because like for 15 minutes of pleasure in your mouth, you feel awful for days. That didn't work out to me. I was like, no. So I just started creating those favorite foods like cinnamon rolls into exotic protein, low carb, sugar-free ones. And I was like, I can have these instead.
Okay. For our company, Herbal Mana, we're all about pain and inflammation. How does your approach to diet impact inflammation?
Well, You're tugging at my heartstrings. You're familiar with Lyme disease, yeah?
Very
So my husband, it was maybe 10 years ago. I was like, something's not right, because he was in pain for 10 years before that. He blamed it on old football injury, but he eats primarily carnivore. But Lyme disease is powerful, and I fear what his pain would be like if he ate sugar, you know? So it's manageable now. But he had Lyme disease for probably, 20 years, and now he has something called ankylosing spondylitis. If you're familiar with that.
I am.
It's where, for your listeners, make it a little emotional. It's basically where the joints calcify and turn to bone. So he can't really move his upper body. It causes a lot of pain. And
My dad has, it's challenge, real challenge. Keeping movement is a challenge.
yep, it ate away his hip. So he had no joint basically in his hip anymore. And it was like bone on bone and a lot of pain. So he had that replaced. So I want to tell people, like, this is going to help manage your pain, but it doesn't make things go away. I'm really honest about that, because a lot of people will be like, well, Craig, just eat carnivore, or just eliminate all plants. He's like, I've done that. We wrote a book about it 10 years ago. It's not a new thing for him. I think I'm maybe the culprit, because I am very active. I walk, I run, I ride bike. I don't sit down very much. And I think he tries to keep up sometimes. And then that would be like, and a lot of times, you know what herxing is?
No.
So herxing is where you do a protocol that helps eliminate the Lyme, or like you do sauna, help that eliminate toxins, but it causes this storm of Lyme or whatever you're dealing with in your body, and the pain is like you're bedridden. It's awful. So like I'll think of like taking like an NAD supplement to help increase that. That would cause like a cytokine storm. Sometimes like BPC 157. Are you familiar with that peptide?
I'm taking it every day right now, shooting up every.
It's not legal, but just kidding. That would cause like a cytokine storm. So instead of taking the pain away, it would make it worse. So, but I do want to tell people, like, if he did eat sugar, if he did eat carbohydrates, that would cause him to be like in extreme pain. But he's walking around and stuff. It's just not pain free.
I've got 20 orthopedic surgeries, a few broken bones.
Um,
I'm on the path to creating the products that we have, because I've got NAD. With the diet, I get a really big push.
Yeah.
If I'm doing the carbs, especially processed carbs, I just flame hurt. If I stay off the garbage carbs, I do pretty well, even if I'm doing carbs through fruit or vegetables, as long as it's moderate.
Yeah.
Then the pain is significantly reduced. If I eat
Yeah.
carbs, processed carbs, processed anything, and it just all lights right back up.
Well, oxalates was a big culprit for him. Are you familiar with oxalates?
I am.
They're like little crystals in things like kiwi or cabbage. So that really bothers him, because he would be kind. Someone made us burger patties and made it like a coleslaw, especially like raw cabbage. That's a lot of oxalates, and he was kind, and he just ate some of it, and he was in pain for like days after that. So oxalates are a big culprit for his pain. And they sneak in. They're in a lot of things. But I was gonna say, so I was telling you I do those like keto and carnivore retreats, and we were in Italy, and I'm not a judgy person. Some people would have gelato, but some people are on this diet because they have so much pain and migraines if they veer off. So I don't eat the gelato. That's not my thing. Like you said, I'm not, an alcoholic that has vodka on Fridays. I'm not going to go to Italy and have gelato. But some people did. But like Nancy, she was one on my retreat. She's like, no, I don't want to be in pain the rest of the trip. I enjoy the way I feel. And we had plenty of my desserts and stuff. It wasn't tempting whatsoever. So, but
You had your desserts on your retreat in Italy. So this is cooking as a retreat?
Sometimes, yeah. Or the restaurants we go to will make my flourless chocolate torte, because that is an easy recipe and there's nothing weird in it. It's only like 5 ingredients. So even in Italy, you can find those ingredients. And so they'll make that for our dinner with some like cream or berries or something like that. And so, yeah, no, I try to keep people, satisfied, and they, I want them to enjoy the food, because some of them will bring a spouse or a partner that's not, or a friend that's not keto and not really interested in it. But then at the end, their ears are perking up. They're like, wow, and they will send me a message months later, like, oh, I did it. I tried it and I'm down, 20 pounds and I feel so much better. I'm energetic again. And, so you get to them somehow usually.
Huh? That's interesting. You've got those retreats. I like the sound of something immersive. That's where a lot of folks in my space have misconceptions. They can buy one of our topical creams, for instance, rub it on. You get this complaint at least once or twice. Hey, I got the cream. I just rubbed it on and I'm still in pain.
Yeah.
They have a chronic shoulder, chronic whatever, and then thinking one quick application of product that they're going to fix a 10-year problem. I like the immersive approach, the retreats. There's a lot of cooking too, because we've got to work on the inside and work our way out to the joints, the skin, the other issues that we're having. We don't take it seriously, and maybe even just a little bit fanatically, but I got to get the results. Chronic.
Well, it's not an 80-20 thing. So if you're not cutting out, especially like gluten, or if you have an autoimmune condition that's causing this pain, you're not cutting it out 100%. It's not like, oh, I had a little bit of bread or whatever. It's 100%. And some people, again, they tried the bread in Italy because they heard like, oh, this doesn't have as much gluten as it does in the States, which is true. But they still are like, I can't even walk today. It's not worth it. I'm like, I know.
Yeah. For some, easy to be spot on. I've got celiac disease, so I cannot vary in the least. And I've got an impatient. I feel so crummy after, and it takes me a couple of weeks to recover from gluten. So to me, it's not worth it. I try to get folks to see take the same point of view. It's just not worth it. If you eat the garbage, you're going to hurt for a few days, maybe longer. Overkill is probably not too much.
No.
Right foods in your life.
People have said I'm extreme, but there was a woman who I helped lose 270 pounds. 270 pounds, that's like 2 humans, 2 women. She wouldn't even go to the grocery store or a store because she couldn't, if she had to go to the bathroom, she couldn't fit into a stall. Like that's how large Twyla was. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it's not worth it to us. We've talked about it many times, and she's now one of my coaches, but it's just not worth it. We don't feel like we're missing out. Oh, I know what it said. On the cover of the magazine, it said, Twyla lost 270 pounds on ultra keto. And I'm like, what's ultra keto? Anything else? Keto, like trigger word, like 10 years ago. And you have Duncan Hines keto and Costco bread keto. That's all junk. A lot of it has gluten in it still. So that's our definition of ultra keto, I guess. And maybe I am strict or extreme, but I don't feel like I'm missing out. I eat delicious food. And when people travel and find that out, they're like, yeah, you eat good, girl. But I'm not going to eat the sugar or the gluten or any of that.
There's no doubt that your approach is looked at as extreme, but it's kind of odd because isn't it more extreme to have ultra-processed foods, seed oils that are inflammatory, disastrous for your cell health?
Yep.
All kinds of odd things. I was looking, Instagram post, McDonald's fries. Turn back the clock a few decades to McDonald's fries, which, by the way, were invented in my home state. One of our local farm guys was the main supplier for French fries. We had potatoes, beef tallow, salt. That was McDonald's French fries.
Yep.
These days, the list is about 12 ingredients, all mysterious, except for the potatoes. I still know what those are. But after that, it's all kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
That, to me, is more extreme when we're taking a food and completely bastardizing the food, introducing substances our bodies can't deal with, harming our own cell health, just to make it more convenient, give it more shelf life, make it more profitable. That's really not what we're after. We want something that's going to work for the body. And for extreme, that's okay. I'm okay being that.
Same here. And some people question my parenting on what my children eat, because they eat steak and they eat burgers for breakfast and salmon for breakfast. Like, it's pretty odd things, but at the same time, if I gave them Pop-Tarts, not my Pop-Tarts, so they gave them the store Pop-Tarts, nobody would say a thing. Nobody would question me. But the fact, yeah, they're just eating real food without a.
Of issues, all kinds of bad habits, all kinds of health issues, some that are going to stick around for a long time. Once you pair cell health, it takes a rebuild, recover.
We homeschool, so I have, a little bit of benefit, but they still have friends. They go to birthday parties and stuff like that, and they are, tempted or whatever, given option to have a sugary treat. And they've done that and they don't feel good. They're like, I never want to do that again. And so I just plan ahead and, kind of prepare them with options. But my son is now in high school football. So he takes freshman football. And so it's his first time with all of these other high schoolers. And the food that they give them as a football team, I'm just, kind of like shocked. I was like, why do we even have to have food involved? I was in sports and they didn't feed us for games and stuff. But he'll bring like my beef jerky and things like that. And all the other kids, like, it's always gone. Like, I give him a huge Ziploc and it's always gone. They're like, all the kids wanted some. And I was like, that's because they want to look like you. He doesn't even try, and he's all muscle.
Awesome.
Like, he's ripped.
Right stuff, and magical things can happen.
I know.
Especially if you're feeding the right protein. Shopping for protein is a little challenging these days. If you go to it's kind of interesting. I go to the local store, there's a health food section. Yes, that section is healthy. The rest is not so healthy. But in the health food section, I find some things that just don't work for me. I see a lot of pea protein, which cheap protein, easy to grow, easy to harvest, easy to process, not so easy.
No, it's not easy on the body. I was just going to say, like, the rate of absorption is terrible. If you look at, like, if it says 20 grams of protein per scoop, you really only net 10. So you have to get double the amount, which is expensive.
Well, at least it tastes awful. That makes up for it. And it's gritty. Oh, that's awesome.
I don't even know. I have never tried it, but.
Right. And it does not agree with me. It is not good. And availability, it's so poor. You're paying a lot of money for a super processed food that's not going to stick.
Let's talk about bioavailability, right? So, like, oysters are filled with zinc. They have a ton of zinc if you eat them alone. If you pair them with black beans, you get about 30% of the zinc that you would then alone. If you pair it with one corn tortilla, you get 0 zinc. So you think that protein powders are anything? First of all, drinking your calories is not an ideal situation for anybody. Maybe like a bodybuilder.
I did try to drink my calories. I made this mistake recently. Doing a lot of big salads, bunch of steak on the salad. Got tired of chewing, put it through the blender, tried to drink it. Bad, terrible mistake. Ruined a perfectly good ribeye. But I still drank it. I did not ruin it.
A ribeye?
Well, I was just tired of chewing. I thought it would be a good alternative. No. It was healthy, just awful.
No, I couldn't do it. That's funny.
As far as the protein, how can somebody figure out how much they need? How can they calculate that?
Well, I have an easy answer if you don't mind.
I love it.
If you go to ketomaria.com, there's a link for the macro calculator. It's free, and it'll give you your macros because everybody's macros are different. And it's probably twice as much protein as what you're getting, especially if you have eggs for breakfast.
How much protein should a person target?
Well, it depends on their situation. Also, like if somebody has cancer, I'm going to tell them to do different range, or epilepsy, seizures, things like that. But a healthy individual, about 0.8 to 1 times their lean mass in ounces.
So up to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I get even more than my lean mass just because I like it. I just feel great on it. Gives me energy. And the whole idea of like Are you familiar with gluconeogenesis? This idea that protein turns into sugar. Well, I'm here to tell you that a chicken breast is not the same as chocolate cake, and it's a demand-driven process. So there's parts of your body that do need glucose. Your thyroid does, parts of your brain do. And if you're not eating any glucose, so if you're a carnivore, for eating very little bit of carbs, you need to make it somehow. And that's where protein comes into play. And that's a good thing. Keeps you healthy and alive. It's not a bad thing.
I had to reassess how it was approaching protein. I had quite a shoulder injury 2 years ago. Torn meniscus, torn the labrum, torn biceps tendon, torn rotator. And among other things, with my naturopath, we started looking at the diet. That's where I got a little more in tune with bioavailability of protein. I was getting plenty of protein. I wasn't necessarily getting the protein that was bioavailable, and I wasn't getting protein that absorbed at a proper rate. I was depending too much on whey.
Oh, that's
sources which were not awesome.
Yeah.
I still lose whey, but I use it in a very limited fashion. So if I hit the gym, I work hard, I come home, I'll hit whey. But if I want protein later in the day, removed somewhat from my workout, it's not such a hot option.
Yeah.
Different
Especially,
absorption rates, different bioavailability.
or if someone does have insulin resistance, diabetes, difficulty losing weight, whey, or any autoimmune issues, whey is dairy, and it's so quickly absorbed into the bloodstream, it can cause issue for their diabetes. So,
Problematic.
the beef protein powder, but again, that's pretty rare, and I'll make recipes with it so people don't have to just drink it.
Which beef protein powder?
Equip.
I've
Yeah,
been several
very
years.
quality sourced. I love the owner, super nice guy, very open to suggestions, and there's no of the bad sweeteners in there. They use stevia. So it's not super sweet, so it's not like, ooh, and it tastes great. It doesn't taste like beef at all.
Wow.
I make a hot chocolate with mine once in a while. Don't drink your calories. I know, but it's like a special.
Maybe a few calories, not too many calories.
Right. Yeah.
Notice you do coaching. You have coaches that you train. How does that work, and who do they engage with? What kind of folks should be connecting?
Me. I just couldn't keep up with the business, and I had a few people say I would love to be one of your coaches. So I just created kind of a school. So there's some things that they have to do, on their own, research and stuff, like assignments we give them. But every week they have, class with me and my husband, Craig, and we get together and we meet and we talk, and, you pass the test eventually and you become a coach. And then I also do we do a spa retreat get together every year. So it's a nice way to meet each other, because if people are all over the world, it's nice. Most people are in the United States, but we get together and talk about life and our job. And some people, they do it full time. Some people, it's just an added bonus, and some people, they just want the best coaching available for them, or maybe their family too. So they'll do my coaching program because they get all the information and everything. So yeah, but it's not, you can take as long as you want to pass the test, but
I think it's great that you can multiply your influence, share that, teach your folks.
we need more soldiers like you to help get the word out, because as much as I love people, I'm an introvert. So to have a podcast, I'm like, no, I don't, that's just not me. I'd rather be in my tree stand or something, but we need people like you to get the word out, because I still see veganism everywhere. People mistakenly think that red meat is going to cause cancer or heart disease. It's sad.
This vegan thing's kind of, I've had friends that have tried that, and they just kind of beat themselves up, and you can see their health slowly deteriorate. Their skin doesn't look as good. Their hair doesn't look as healthy. It's just the way to go.
You need cholesterol. You need cholesterol to make healthy hormones. And if you don't do it,
bad. Isn't the Heart Association saying it's bad? You need statin drugs. You need all kinds of cholesterol tamping reducing protocol.
Okay, then I want everybody to think about this. Why would breast milk be one of the highest foods in cholesterol? Because God wanted to kill these babies? No. It's because it's building their whole body and helping their hormones create. It's not a bad thing. If you don't need enough cholesterol, you're
large amounts of cholesterol. As children, adolescents, even as adults, we need large amounts of dietary cholesterol.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that there's such an inaccurate push from some parts of allopathic medicine, really driven by corporate farms and some of the pharmaceuticals, because they make their money in a little different.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like regenerative farming is the way to go. But even if all you can afford is cheap beef, it's still better than
Absolutely.
a cereal.
And on the beef side, interesting when you said you went to see the veterinarian talk diet. On the farm, whenever something was wrong with the cow, the horse, the dog, the cat, the first thing we look at is diet. I've never had an MD talk to me about diet. Now, my naturopath, oh yeah, we talk about it. As far as my MD, what I've been doing for joint surgery, sinus surgery, other things like that, no diet, ever. And you got our dog, we go to the vet, they've got their recommendations. We like this brand, we don't like that brand. Here's why you pick one versus the other. And here's your recipe to make it yourself if you need to go with really high nutritional content.
Wow.
But I don't see that at the MD's office. Just doesn't happen.
You work primarily with pain with people, is that correct?
No.
So when you work with women that have gone through menopause or even like a little bit before, do you ever talk to them about, like with frozen shoulder or pain, even like gut pain? It could be the lack of estrogen.
We do. And you go see your naturopath or your healthcare provider and start getting some blood, get some labs, get some data, so you can really find out what in the world's going on. In fact, my wife wrestles with that as post-menopause. And she just had another round of blood work because she's got to stay on top of that.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of BHRT because I've seen so many people, it transforms their life, whether it be like pain, joint pain, frozen shoulder, gut pain, chronic UTIs. It's all lack of estrogen because all those places have estrogen receptors. And we've been told a bill of lies that it causes breast cancer. Especially like a topical cream has never been proven that.
Just like that meat's supposed to cause all kinds of bad things. And in fact, it does not.
Yeah. Well,
healthy choice. Yeah.
100%.
From the mainstream side of medicine and nutrition, we're not getting a heck of a lot of help.
No, we're not. We're not. It's that I love that you know about like BPC 157 or like thymosin alpha 1, but you legally can't get those anymore because they help people so much. And it's pharmaceutical.
Well, you can get them, but you've got to work through the right channels.
True.
And it is pharmaceutical sales kind of poo-pooed because it's not pharmaceutical. They're not making the normal market. They're not controlling that. In fact, we run into this with some of our products. For all of our products, we use something called dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, which is a natural anti-inflammatory. Comes from trees. Comes from wood pulp, just a natural byproduct. Awesome. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory. Will bind with free radicals, carry them out of your system. It has all kinds of wonderful properties. Yeah. However, it's a natural substance. It cannot be owned by a pharmaceutical company. Yep. So the pharmaceutical companies talk down about DMSO, even the FDA somewhat, except when they have FDA-approved procedures that use DMSO. In fact, DMSO is used every day in medicine. Use it to store organs for transplants, stem cells for transplant, all kinds of things. GPO. So out of one side of the mouth, they're saying it's not very useful. It doesn't do anything. Out of the other side, it's used every day in mainstream. It's just interesting to see how they try to control the dialogue because of the finances. We see the same thing in diet. The same thing. We're going to give you a cheap processed food. First of all, soybeans, soy protein.
They want to keep you sick.
What's that?
They want to keep you sick.
Oh, yeah. They're the sickness. It's not in the wellness.
Well, they make money off of us being sick, where in China, they actually make money when they get their patients better.
I like it.
I like that too.
Much better approach.
Much better.
More like what I see with my doc, my naturopath, where I get labs and help, diet help, some supplementation for wellness, rapid wellness.
100%. 100%. But it's interesting how like our food industry is different than it is in other countries too. I had so somebody that was on one of my retreats. I do about 4 years. So another one, she said, Maria, I had to mail Cinnamon Toast Crunch to my daughter who was living in Australia for a year teaching there or something. I was like, first of all, you didn't have to mail her anything. But her daughter said the Cinnamon Toast Crunch here is not as sweet and not as good. She wanted the U.S. Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
It is different. When I travel in Europe, food is different, less sweetness. Even if I order, I shouldn't do a soda occasionally. If I order a soda in the States, it's large and it comes with all kinds of refills, always getting pestered. You want more, you want more. When I was in Europe recently, a soda, it's this big, and little glass about that big around, maybe 1/4 the size of an American serving. It's just a whole different approach.
Same with their coffee drinks, same with everything.
Same thing.
What?
As far as diets, I noticed you talk about quite a few different things. Protein sparing, keto, carnivore. What's the difference? And why would we go down one path versus another? How did somebody know?
So the keto diet is something that most people are familiar with, where you're lowering carbohydrates, getting your body into a ketosis type state. Higher ketones they mean nothing unless you have like epilepsy or seizures. But higher ketones don't mean better fat burning anything. Okay, so it just means you ate a lot of fat, really. So then the carnivore diet is an extension of keto. Someone who has a lot of autoimmune, I like to think of it as the ultimate autoimmune protocol. Cutting out the oxalates and, but I also, if someone does have autoimmune, cut out the dairy. So then that carnivore is pretty limited, but some people, I'm like a dog, I could eat the same thing. It doesn't bother me. But that's more for autoimmune protocol. Someone that's trying to lose weight and really having a hard time, I'm not going to go to carnivore. I've done weight loss challenges this year, and I had a carnivore weight loss challenge, and I had with protein sparing, and I had a keto weight loss challenge. The keto weight loss challenge did better. A lot of people are shocked about that, but I've seen people gain weight on carnivore. They're eating all the cheese and the heavy cream and putting butter on the ribeye. That is too much fat. There's no plate. People think that it just shoots out your butt, and it doesn't. If it did, you'd have diarrhea all the time. Do you remember Olestra? Yeah, Olestra, the WOW chips had a label, causes anal leakage, is because you do not want more than about 8% of fat going through your stools. Otherwise, you're going to have diarrhea. So people, they don't realize it goes through the bloodstream. I've seen triglycerides go through the roof with people eating a high-fat carnivore diet if they're trying to lose weight, if they're already overweight. So that's why I'll use a protein-sparing modified fast approach with keto, which is not something you do every day. You do it 1, 2, or 3 days a week. And if you're only like 10 pounds overweight, it's not something I would recommend because you're going to be extremely hungry because you don't have a lot of fuel on your body. But someone who has 100 pounds on their body, I had Tyler, he was 650 pounds. He lost 100 pounds in 2 months because he had a lot of fuel on his body. He could do more protein-sparing modified fast days. But the reason I don't do every day a protein-sparing modified fasting day is because I don't want to downregulate the thyroid, because that's something that can happen if you constantly eat low calories. So you kind of like mess it up, right? Up and down. And I usually have people, they do 3 protein-sparing modified fast days a week. They do 1 overfeeding day a week. And that's not a Pizza Hut day, but it's maybe like the ribeye or ribs, something fattier and higher calories, 1 day a week. But it's very effective. People lose massive amounts of weight. I try to post these testimonies on my Instagram every once in a while, and people are like, whoa, crazy.
That's how the name protein sparing. I thought, wait a minute. Keto, carnivore, protein sparing. What is that? I don't want to come back to protein.
No. It's sparing the protein on your body. So it's a lot of protein, even more than what your regular, and on the calculator on the website at ketomaria.com, it'll give you your protein sparing days if you want to, the macros for that, because it's going to be a bit higher than low fat, low calories, or low carbs. So, and it's just so it's taking in place of a water fast day, you're doing a protein sparing fast day, modified fasting day, where instead of doing just water, where you will lose muscle mass, you're going to eat enough protein so you don't lose any muscle, but you lose fat. So whenever someone goes on a diet, they're going to lose some muscle. It's just fats. With Ozempic, it can be up to 50% muscle loss, what their weight loss.
That's not talked about in the mainstream press. Ozempic is being praised, semaglutide being praised, and it is awesome, I suppose, in some ways. However, that aspect I've never seen addressed in mainstream media.
Well, not just that. I work with a lot of people in summer on Ozempic, and their depression rates are going through the roof because you lose pleasure in not just food, but everything that you once enjoyed. Your desire for doing anything kind of stops. So that's another issue. But like a regular weight loss, you're going to maybe lose about 20% muscle. Protein sparing modified fast is down to 2%. That's the lowest you can get. And that's why I love it.
I saw a post from Jeremy London recently. He's a cardiologist. I just like he summarizes things that he says. And actually, he was quoting somebody else. I can't remember. Soul is the organ of longevity.
Yeah.
And I love that thought. So many folks in our space have trouble with chronic pain. So they move a little bit less. Then they lose some muscle. And they move a little bit less.
Yeah.
And if they combine that with poor diet, there's even more muscle. And then their world starts to shrink. Our little tagline that we came up with for our company is hurt less, live more. But to get the live more part, you got to be able to move more, do more, and actually get out and do things. We're all about moving.
Well, here's the thing. People spend so much time going to the gym. Maybe they don't even like it, but they do it. They go to the gym and do that. But then the rest of the day, they're sitting still. Where, again, in Amsterdam, nobody was overweight. Nobody goes to the gym. There's no gym, but they walk everywhere. They walk everywhere. Like I walk a lot here, but I walked about twice as much there because just to get to the restaurant was a mile, or hoofing it there and back, and walking after meals is so good, but nobody does that here. We get in our car and drive.
Sit at the desk all day.
Yeah.
I got into that. I had to get one of these guys. It's not very fancy.
Put out more?
It's set to a default 20 minutes. When I start working, I kind of get in the zone, and sometimes I'll lose myself a couple of hours sitting at the desk.
Yeah.
So a timer to remind me to get up and move every 20 minutes.
Nice. Even
there's just wisdom in moving. And second, just for focus, adults start to lose focus at about the 18-minute. So if I'm just pounding away for an hour and a half, my productivities, the mental side, the focus side, and the effect on my own body, my own joint issues.
Nice.
So movement, got to do the movement.
I like that. I like that tip. I'm gonna have to get one of those. But I don't really sit still ever. This is like the longest I sit still.
You don't sit still? Is that why you're able to get out, do your bow hunt and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always like, I walk and talk. Even on my runs, I would like schedule a phone meeting because I just don't want to just sit there. I don't like it. I like to move. I feel like my best ideas happen when I'm moving.
That's great. How about sleep? How does that get impacted by the diet, by the foods, and how does it impact health?
Well, I think people think it's all about food when it comes to weight loss and health, but sleep is so important. Most people are getting like 6 hours a night, and they don't realize how there's been some studies, people having 6 hours a night versus 8 hours a night, and they feed them the same thing. And people that are sleeping 6 hours, they gain primarily fat, where the people that sleep 8 are able to build muscle on the same fuel. Is that crazy? But just how when you're sleeping 6 hours, your blood sugars are naturally going to be higher the next day. Despite how well you eat, they're going to be higher. And that's going to have you look at carbs differently. You're going to want them more. And even if you eat the same thing, your hunger satiety is going to be set at another level. Like you're going to need so much more food to feel satisfied and full. Leptin resistance.
Can't I just make that up in the morning with caffeine?
Mm-hmm.
Caffeine in the morning, caffeine for lunch, maybe caffeine in the afternoon.
So caffeine is going to increase blood sugar. Caffeine is going to increase blood sugar on average about 8%. And that's why when you drink it, your hunger will go away for that short period of time, but eventually you have to stop it. And the hunger comes back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And when I tell people to cut out the caffeine, a lot of them will lose 4 pounds in a week. And that's the only thing that they changed.
Yeah.
And coffee, it's filled with mold and all the other things. So I don't recommend it. And I was the most addicted to coffee than anybody. So
Not a great substitute for a poor night's sleep. You just set yourself up for another difficult day.
yeah,
It's massive willpower to overcome the sugar crash.
I prioritize my sleep.
I'm going to have a sugar crash. I'm going to have an intense craving.
Yep.
I can do the same with caffeine. Over caffeinate, I'm going to have a crash. I'm going to want to, I don't know if we call that the munchies, but it's something in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I drive that urge to eat something.
This is how hunger happens, is a falling blood sugar. So when it starts falling, that hunger is going to be in overdrive. If you keep it nice and even, you're going to get hungry, but it's not hangry like a falling blood sugar. This is why you can go to a Chinese buffet and eat all the sugar chicken and white rice. And maybe an hour later, your belly should be full. You ate at a buffet. An hour later, sure, I can have some ice cream. It's not because your belly's not full. It's because that blood sugar is starting to fall. Yeah. So you got to get a sugar roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh, it just beats you. That's why I had such a hard time, early success, followed by hard times with a couple rounds of the wrong kinds of diets. The high carb, low protein, low fat. It's great because I was young and I could do crazy amounts of exercise. But when I settled into regular life, where I could only exercise at half an hour a day, or hour a day, it all started to reverse.
Yeah.
And when I started a different chapter and did the cheat, it worked for a while, but it took massive amounts of self-control. And eventually I was just beating myself up. It became too difficult to sustain.
Yeah.
Those sugar crashes are hard. They are hard. Willpower only goes so far.
Yeah. And just think about, like, if your kids do this too, their moods are so much even keeled. Like, they don't have breakdowns. Just like any adult that's not on a sugar up and down, they're not going to have the breakdowns either. They're going to be even keeled.
If our folks are going to have chronic pain, if they start down the path with you, how soon will they start to feel something changing?
Oh, a day or two.
A day or two.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just the beginning. They're going to keep feeling better and better and better, especially if they do it properly with electrolytes and stuff. Because when you cut out the carbohydrates, low energy, low moods, heavy legs walking upstairs, that's not the keto flu. It should be called the carb withdrawal. Let's not blame keto for that. And if you do it properly, you don't get that.
In just a couple of days, they'll start feeling different.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because I see a lot of diets that don't move the needle, not very quickly, and it becomes difficult for somebody to sustain.
The needle doesn't always move with keto. You can do all the cheese and all the nuts and gain weight. But
First time buddy introduced me to keto, this is years ago. And I was slamming the steaks and the cheese. And it was awesome. I was having a ball.
Yeah.
No progress. No progress. And after 2 weeks, I just felt horrible.
Yeah.
Because I was just doing it the wrong way.
It's too much fat.
Too much. Yep. I was relying on it. I was having fun. It's cheese fest. But I didn't take the time to learn, or really to unlearn some of the bad habits that I had.
Yeah.
Once I learned that, cut back the fats, cut back the cheese, got to a reasonable amount, wonderful things.
Yeah.
Quick changes. And it was awesome.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Right. If somebody wants to find you and interface with you, I know you've got multiple websites, 21 books, whatever that number. It's all awesome. Where does somebody start? I know
I tried to just put it all at ketomaria.com. And then if you scroll down, you can find the retreats, you can find the coaching information. You can also find the blog on one side that has thousands of free recipes. I try to put out a new recipe every 3 days, and I've been doing that for decades. And then there's the other side where if you want one-on-one help with me, like phone calls and stuff like that, you can find that. I don't know, go on a retreat, because it's like a phone consult on steroids, right? You could ask me any question. I'm at your, your help, but I just love.
Do you have retreats on the calendar for this coming year?
Yep, we are going to Costa Rica in January, but that one you can't. It's too close to now. Yesterday was the last day to sign up, and then I'm supposed to go to Vietnam in March, but I don't have enough people. Greece in May, that one is a go. Croatia in end of June, and then either Sicily or Italy in September. So we're not really sure which one we're going to go there because they both were such. Not Sicily, Sardinia, the island. But I don't make any money on these retreats. It's just because I don't know. I just love to meet new. I'm working all the time. I homeschool kids. I don't get to make time. I don't have time to make friends. So this is my way to just like let go and have fun. And I love to travel. Like I love it so much.
Fantastic. I love there's so many ways to plug in. I like the immersive approach.
Thank
I
you.
hope that our folks that watch this podcast understand if you're really going to make a change, you've got to immerse. You've got to get the diet right. You've got to make sure that you're really taking it seriously because it's your health. You can't have a bad diet and then rub something on and expect you're going to get optimal results. Rubbing something
No.
awesome is going to help.
Yeah.
Getting the diet right and then rubbing something on are better. And we're after that health, that longevity.
100%.
Going to hurt less and live more. You've got to maybe be a little over the top.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, this is
thanks.
awesome.
It's been fun.
Yeah, I love your material, by the way. I really do love it. I'm not saying that just because you're on the show. I do love that everything is so accessible. I dive into the recipes, especially when I'm online, I dive into the recipes. I see Instacart in some areas as an option. How much easier can you make it for us to gather what we need? It's awesome.
Totally. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Very sweet. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. Hang around just a sec.
Okay.